All right. On this True Law Stories, we're going to talk about how our when she was a public defender, Lenora Easter here had her infamous witness take his shirt off in court. And a little bit more about the Bronx defenders, how she saved a mother's future, how Partners for Justice supports public defenders and saves the futures of people that just were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Just overall, the state of the public defender program in the U.S. All this on True Law Stories. But first, of course, this is brought to you by videocasestory.com. One of the best ways to grow your law practice or any other business is through your client stories. Go to videocasestory.com to learn more, or pick up the book at Video Testimonials That Land a Big Fish, available on Amazon now. And so tell us a little bit about before we get into some of these crazy stories with the missing person case that was pretty famous in Orlando. Tell me a little bit about your background as being an attorney.
Sure. I started law school late in life. I didn't do the traditional route of going right after college. But while I was in law school, I interned at the public defender's office in Orlando, Florida, the Ninth Judicial Circuit. And I fell in love with the ability to be able to help people when they're voiceless. Because I will say, going into law school, I did not want to be a criminal defense attorney. I didn't want to get into criminal law, period. I had law enforcement parents, but didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in entertainment law. And at the time, and I might be dating myself, I wanted to travel with P. Diddy and Bad Boy, and I wanted to try to make that money, travel around the world, have some fun. But when I did this internship, it really touched my heart. And I had great supervisors at the time, that being able to help people at their worst and when they really don't have a voice. And so fast forward, I graduated, and that same office was the office that I got my first job out of law school. And I practiced there for 5.5 years doing misdemeanor, felony, and traffic cases. After that, I am from the Bronx, New York. So I'm a New York girl. It was always the dream to be a New York attorney. So I went back home to New York. And while I was studying for the bar, I asked to volunteer at the Bronx Defenders. They allowed me to do that. And sure enough, I took the bar. I passed it, thank God. And they offered me a position as a staff attorney. And I spent 8 years practicing in the Bronx, New York, my hometown. And it was, my whole thing about doing nonprofit public defense work, especially in the Bronx, was to give back to the community that I was raised in, a community that a lot of people look down upon. It's poor. And so I wanted to do what I could to help that, to make a change there. And so while I was there, I not only represented individuals, but I was able to start an early defense program in 2019, which helped the community with respect to individuals who were sought after by the police or were being investigated for their children possibly to be taken out of their home. They would have representation, because for the most part, an individual, if you don't have the money, you don't get representation on the early end of cases like that.
Yeah, that's tough work because hiring an attorney is expensive.
It is.
It is.
I
It
couldn't
is.
even probably afford one. I don't know. I would have to try to represent myself.
I've worked with a lot of criminal defense attorneys over the years, and there's a lot of people just wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, maybe they did something a little bit bad, but that little bad thing could end up ruining their life.
It's
And
so true. Yes.
yeah,
Not everyone is guilty of things that they're accused of. Sometimes, like you just said, wrong place, wrong time. Sometimes they weren't even in the place at the time, and it's just like misidentification, wrong person, period. And we're there to make sure that their rights are adhered to, that they go through the system properly. And at the end of the day, people think, oh, you represent somebody bad, like you're helping them to get off. 90% of the people that I
no,
represented did not get off. There was some sort of consequence or penalty to whatever action occurred.
no, exactly. And there's a lot of people too that there's so many cases I've seen where people get railroaded. And we did one case too where it was an entrepreneur and was talking to the criminal defense firm. The U.S. government decided they're going after him. And luckily he has millions of dollars, but he spent millions of dollars.
Exactly.
And there's so many, just so much of that. Or maybe they did do something wrong, but it was a mistake and they just got nervous or something like that. Most of these people are not hardened criminals, are they?
Yes, they're not. They're not. And when you get sick, you go to the doctor, right? When you get in trouble, you need help. It doesn't matter if you're rich or if you are poor or if you are middle class, you deserve to have proper representation, period.
Yeah. And also a lot of the people that are poor, they have a double whammy, because then people do look down on them too when they're in court. They just assume they're guilty, don't they?
Very much, yes. If you are black or brown, or if you are poor, you don't have certain means, you dress a certain way, as they say, first impression, lasting impression type of thing. Yes, people will judge you by your appearance or by the things that they see, not knowing the facts and not knowing like what really happened.
Yeah, yeah. And I will talk about the crazy case, but I'm sure you had some good victories though when you were a public defender. Besides that crazy case, are there any that popped to your head, top of your head?
Yes, I would say I've had a lot of victories, and I've had a lot of cases where maybe we didn't get a dismissal, but I was able to help the person in some way, some shape, some form, and capacity. So one of the things about Bronx defenders is that's different from what I did when I was an attorney in Orlando is it's the holistic approach to public defense, which means that you work with an interdisciplinary team that assists that client with every single issue, because a lot of times arrests have collateral consequences, right?
Yeah.
An individual can lose their house, they can lose their children, they can lose their job. And so at the Bronx Offenders, this individual would have like a one-stop shop, a set of attorneys that can help with the housing, that can help with the social service side of things and whatnot. And so I love doing that. And that was definitely like when we talk a little bit more why I wanted to stay in that realm, even when I decided to step away from the litigation side of this. But as far as a story, I bring that up because one of the stories I think about is my last trial that I had as an attorney for now with the Bronx Offenders before I started working at Partners for Justice. And it was with the client that I'd had for, I would say, about almost 4 years because of COVID. And she and her wife at the time were charged with attempted murder, a situation we were a little bit talking about wrong place, wrong time, but she was in an abusive relationship and they were charging them as co-conspirators. And she was facing a minimum of 5 years. Single mother. I was going to say single mother because she was married, but she had a child. She's in this abusive relationship. She's never been arrested before. Her wife, that was a different story. But we tried so very hard to get a non-incarceratory disposition, and the district attorney just would not budge. He came down from 5 years to 2. The wife took it. Our client didn't want to go to jail, and rightfully so. And so we had to fight. We wind up getting halted because of COVID for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then we wind up going to a domestic survivor violence relation, DSV, domestic violence, DVS, domestic violence survivor hearing, sorry, tongue-tied,
No problem.
where we were able to, she did have to take a plea, basically saying that she was guilty to a charge. But if we won the trial, the hearing, we could ask for probation, we could ask for like their conditional discharge or something really less. If we lost, she was looking at 5 years. So it was a lot riding on this case. And we had multiple hearings. We had social workers working with us. We had investigators working with us. We had her resource, the program she was working with, her case managers working with us. And as a result, at the end of the day, we wind up winning that hearing. And it was on the last day of my employment at Bronx Defenders that we got that win. And she went from a felony to misdemeanor probation. I get text messages from her all the time, just her continually thanking me that now she has her own apartment. She's no longer with her wife. Her daughter graduated. Her daughter wants to go to law school. She has her own money. She's working. And she just thanks me every day that like she has her freedom. And that's something that sticks with me, because sometimes we as attorneys, we want to just hurry up and we want to just, get cases resolved, especially when they're lagging that long. And if I didn't have the support of the social workers and the case managers and things of that nature, I don't think we would have been able to really get the outcome that we would have gotten and made a difference in this woman's life.
It's true. It's someone like that deserves, even if there was something done wrong, either way, it's not like menace to society, right? And really ruin someone's life and it's transformed someone's life. And that's amazing. That's got to be such a good feeling.
It is. It is a good feeling. And like I said, because sometimes people look at it as the masses. Sometimes it's just one person. And I've helped a lot of people, but to know that in that, like, her life has completely changed, because if she would have went to jail, her daughter would have really didn't have any place for her daughter to live. So her daughter would have been out there. Her daughter probably wouldn't have graduated school. We would have had probably another person in the system because they don't have the support and they're not stable. So
Mhm.
like we were able to avert a lot of those different things, and her life is forever changed because of this.
Yeah, and future of her family. That's amazing.
Yes. Yes. The
That's
impact
amazing.
that
That's
it
that's
has. Mhm.
inspiring for sure. And so tell me a little bit about your work now, a little bit more about what you're doing.
Sure. After leaving Bronx Defenders, like I said, I wanted to stay in something where I could use my skills and my ability to still help in this holistic realm. And so there was Partners for Justice, and Partners for Justice is a nonprofit organization that basically our mission is to change public defense at scale. And how we do that is we go around the nation and we help public defense offices by embedding client advocates. And client advocates are usually young professionals right out of college that kind of want to take some gap year time before going to maybe law school or pursuing any type of career. And they help the public defenders, the attorneys in the office with the wraparound support for clients. So the same way I was able to get that assistance with the social workers and the investigators in my office. And Bronx Defenders is unique because we have it in-house. Not a lot of these public defense organizations are able to do that. It's a lot of money. It's lack of resources. Not they don't have the capacity or the people in the office to work and to do that. But the advocates can step into that gap and help and provide those wraparound services for the clients with respect to their criminal case.
That's
And
amazing.
so I
Yeah,
am the regional director, and I oversee the North region for Partners for Justice, and I oversee the advocates in those sites, and I work alongside the chief PDs, the supervisors, and the attorneys in those particular offices in my region.
that's great. And that's really fulfilling, I'm sure.
Yes, it is, because I'm not doing PD work per se. I'm not litigating. I wanted to take a break. I'm doing PD adjacent work. And so I get to still go to court. I get to still help my advocates with things that I know because I've done them, mitigation work, wraparound support as far as resource navigations. And then I get to help chief PDs, like they ask me for advice on like how they can be a little bit more collaborative in their approach to how they do public defense. And I'm able to provide that insight.
That's great. I don't think people realize how many trials public defenders go through versus your average attorney probably what, 5 trials in their entire career.
Yes, like when I was in Florida, we went to trial. My first trial was 2 weeks in. I was super new, had no real experience. I was forced to go to trial, and I had to do it by myself because my partner was at PD college. And so I walked away with over 40 something trials when I went back to the Bronx. And when I was in the Bronx, they were like, "What? 40 trials?" It's a little different. Each jurisdiction, I would say, is different. In the Bronx, we didn't go to trial a lot. But yes, public defenders get and state attorneys, we get a lot of trials.
Yeah.
That's something you will get that experience.
And there are, like we were saying, there's people that deserve help. And then sometimes you get some interesting people too, don't you? That you still have to defend.
Yes, you definitely do. You get individuals that they did, for the most part, they did do it what they were accused to do, or they did something. And again, our job is to still make sure that their rights are properly adhered to as they're going through the system. And I don't look at it either way. My job is to help an individual, and at the end of the day, if the evidence is there, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. But that's on the state attorney and the police to make sure that happens.
And so you were involved tangentially with a pretty big case in Orlando here, weren't you?
Yes, in my younger early PD years here in Florida, I had a media case where the individual was well known in the media. He was a person of interest for a missing person. I did not represent him on that particular case. I represented him on a criminal mischief misdemeanor case that was separate and apart from that. And it was very interesting because it was my first media case, so I was very nervous. But it was we were able to do some things there because the witness in that particular case was very adamant that the person who hit her van coming out, the people coming out of the house, was somebody that had tattoos all up and down their arm. Our client did not have that. And so I remember us approaching the bench and asking the judge, can our client take the stand? And we want him to take his shirt off. And he was like, no. And the judge was like, are you sure? He was like, just the shirt, not everything, just the shirt. And he allowed it. And I remember that being a picture in the newspaper. And that's how we won our case, because we were able to show, the evidence was able to show that there was no tattoos, especially when this witness was like convinced and sure enough that this person had tattoos. So misidentification here.
Oh my gosh. And so it was a famous case though. And how did you feel throughout that? Did you know like what he was like, cause he was being investigated for something else, correct?
Yes, he was investigated. He was the person of interest in the Tracy Ocasio missing case. They, I believe to this day, have never found her. And yes, when I got the case, I knew who he was because it was all on the news. And I think at this time too, he was being investigated for another assault on a woman, but she was able to get away. And it was, like I said, it was nerve-wracking. But it was part of my job, right? As a public defender, we don't get to pick and choose our cases. That's one thing. Criminal defense attorneys that are private can do that. We don't. But I'm glad that I did it because it helped me to push past my fears. And like I said, it helped me to think outside the box when it came to how to approach my defense for the client.
That's great. That's amazing. These are amazing stories. So tell us a little bit more about if anyone wants to get involved with your organization and support you all.
Yeah, so Partners for Justice, they can go to our website, partnersforjustice.org. And they'll be able to see all of the locations we currently are partnering with across the nation. They'll also be able to see different stories of work that we have done. We have different research evidence that's on our page. And I feel like they can definitely reach out that way. They can also, if they want, send me a direct email at Easter, EASTER, at partnersforjustice.org. And yeah, they can definitely reach out if they want to maybe help and get involved. We're hiring for interns, not interns. We do have interns, but we're hiring for advocates starting in January. And so if there is someone that's interested in doing this type of work, please reach out. And then we, of course, will love donations. As I said, we're a nonprofit.
Of course, of course. We'll put a link to all that in the show notes. Lenora, thank you so much for being on True Law Stories.
Thank you. I appreciate you for inviting me here.
And thank you all for taking Lenora and I on a journey. It's been Iron Garlic and True Law Stories.